a term comes to mind when you were talking about all this. Yeah,
You
most
wish.
people are statistically not gonna hit that lucky Goldilocks zone.
Yeah, to be honest, that was me for like 4 or 5 years.
We know that, regardless of the outcome. So we've already won. We will be prepared and we will welcome it and we will consider it. But the moment you forget why you're doing it, that's when you should smash our Legos together at the end of it.
And then go to sleep, repeat every day.
That makes sense.
Welcome to the 5th episode of the Kimudo podcast. My name is Udo, and today's episode is about gaming and how it has impacted our lives. I've been gaming since I was 5 years old or so. It started with PlayStation 1, and sometime later I got a computer, and then I started PC gaming. But the thing is, I didn't have money, so I was only playing free-to-play games, like League of Legends. And I became addicted to that. And interestingly enough, that's also where I met this other addict named Kim.
Hello. I am, as said, an addict to games. I've been playing games also a long time since I started with Windows 3.11. That is ancient era by now for many people who are listening. But if you are older than us, you will remember Windows 3.11 as being a big staple for when Windows changed more into the GUI. I was kind of born with a keyboard in hand, and I've been able to type on a keyboard and look at the monitor since I was a young kid, so I know a keyboard in and out. I moved a lot, and with that, friends were always with me when I was gaming. I had the internet very early on. We were early adopters of it. We had a dial-up, and I very quickly get to meet people from all over the world. And as I moved a lot, I've moved to a bunch of different countries and a bunch of different states also inside of America, for example. And moving brought with it a lot of different challenges. Your friends are always moving. You have no stable relationships with anybody. And one of the ways I could help alleviate some of that loneliness was having computer friends in the computer, on the internet, that could always come with me no matter where I lived. I always could just connect online and talk to my friends that way. So online friends have been a big part of my life, my whole gaming career, if you will. I've always been playing multiplayer games as long as I can remember. And that connection with humans and people and gaming is a big part of who I am and what has molded me to become what I am today. And I don't know if I chose gaming necessarily. It was more that because I moved a lot, gaming kind of chose me. It is difficult to pick up, for example, drums when you are moving countries because you would have to sell the drums and then buy them again. And I never had a significant amount of money growing up. So that gaming, all you needed was a computer, and the computer would always move with you. So it was easy to keep both games, but also the friends that I mentioned with me. So I eventually became really, really good at it. I've played a lot of games for a very long time. I never became a professional gamer, but I've had professional gamers in a couple of games. So I always played on a decently high level. And I, to this day, it is what relaxes me and recharges my batteries. I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast might be able to relate to that they have something that they always gonna go to that is the way to recharge your batteries from a hard day's of work or stress, or even being with a family, or even being with your extended family or in-laws, anything that stresses you out. I think we all go back to something. For me, that is gaming. Even if I am on vacation, which is something that I love to be on and do, when I come back from the vacation, I always come back to the computer to play some games to recharge. Even if I am quote unquote recharging on the beach, it isn't the same, is it? I think you need that special kind of thing. And for me, even as old as I've gotten, I should have left gaming a long time ago, but I don't think that I ever will because of how alleviating it is for stress for me.
Same, dude. Same for me.
Yeah.
I also think I will still be gaming when I'm 80 years old or so.
Yeah. It's weird because you're supposed to quote unquote outgrow it. You're supposed to get a family and a wife, and you're not supposed to have time for gaming. And I understand that your priorities change for people, but maybe it doesn't change for everybody. And maybe I'm one of those people that will continue gaming until I'm one of those old grandpa gamers. Maybe, you know. And it'll be Twitch. It'll be a new Twitch in the future, but I'll be, Grandpa Gamer 3.0 or whatever in the future. Grandpa Gamer 9000. And I wanted to go into this explaining. So we've made this episode a little bit about why gaming is so important to you and I. And for us to make this episode make sense, I think that many people who are listening to this are going to be gamers already. But if you're not a gamer, we wanted to make it a standalone episode where you can understand even at least the basics, and then you can make this episode useful for you as well. And two of the games that you and I play quite a bit, Udo, well, at least one of the games you and I play quite a bit is League. The other game was StarCraft 2 that I played quite a bit as well growing up. StarCraft 1, Brood War, and then, of course, StarCraft 2 and all the expansions. So I think it'd be useful to explain at least the very basics of how League works and how StarCraft 2 works, as we will be discussing it in this episode. So League of Legends is a multiplayer game with 5 players on each team, so it's 10 people per map. The goal of the game is to destroy the enemy's main base. And I say it's a lot like Tekken. If you've ever played Tekken, it's like a fighting game, except it is in 3D and with a significantly less combos and spells. And of course, it's not 1v1, but instead it's 5v5. Unlike Tekken, you get data screens and replays at the end of the game. And replays are just a tool that you can rewatch all the decisions made by every player in the game. And you can therefore use that to review and learn on what were good decision making by everybody and what were bad decision making. And these things are extremely important, and we will talk about in this episode why these replays are so important for not only life but also for improving inside of the game. And League of Legends, of course, is known as a MOBA. If you ever heard this term before, it's a MOBA game. StarCraft 2, on the other hand, is a real-time strategy game where you build a base. And you build a base, the other person builds a base, and it's 1 versus 1. And there are no other players in the game. It is only up to you to try to destroy the other person's base. And whoever comes out of that wins. It is only you versus the one enemy. The difference here is that in League, you are 1 out of 5 players. And in StarCraft 2, you are 1v1ing, so it is entirely up to your decisions on if you are going to lose or win. It'll be all up to you there. Whereas in in League, you could look at it in one way that you are only 20% of the team. So even if you have perfect gameplay, you are still maybe affecting about 20%, maybe a little bit more, so about 1/5 of the entire team's output, right? Is there something I should explain better or more there, Udo, you think? Or does that explain League and StarCraft 2 sufficiently for listeners to understand what we mean?
I would only add like the objective in League is kind of the same as in StarCraft, but you have to destroy the enemy base in order to win.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
this there's basically like these two differences. In StarCraft, it's basically all about self-accountability. Like if something goes wrong, it's because you could have done something better. Whereas in League, there are 4 more teammates. So if something goes wrong, I mean, you could, in theory, blame it on all of your teammates. But that's just how life works, right? There are factors that you cannot control. You can't control how, I know, the stock market is going right now, or how inflation is, whether inflation is going up or down, or the next war or so. You can't control any of these. So you have to react.
And I think that's one of the good kind of life lessons that you get from gaming. What else have you learned from just playing games and applying it to real life? What have you learned as a gamer?
As I told you guys, I got addicted to League, so most of my life lessons, if you want to call them, will be from League, and analogies will be from League as well. And one of them is that it doesn't matter which champion you play. The most important thing is that you learn the fundamentals of the game. Because the fundamentals are the things that can be applied to any other champion. And in the game of life, this is true as well. It doesn't matter if you are a lawyer, a programmer, or a minimum wage worker like me right now. You still have to learn how to invest your money, how to budget, how to choose friends that help you grow, under which circumstances you work the best, what goals in life you have. All of these questions you have to be able to answer. These are like fundamental questions in life. And the fundamentals are the most important thing.
Yeah, and how important it is, as we've talked about on prior episodes, that some of these things used to be taught by a nuclear family like your parents or your siblings, and then it was kind of put to the education system, schools, etc. But what you're telling me is actually where you kind of derived most of this information was from gaming.
Yeah, basically. My parents did work a lot, probably way too much. So there wasn't much time, but I also appreciate it because because of their hard work, there was money on the table. There was food on the table. So yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, and that's kind of life, right?
And
Is that I don't think that any parent is going into, oh, I can't wait to not teach this or that to my child, right? That's not how anyone goes into it. But it happens because of life, like you're describing. Other priorities take over, or maybe they think that the other parent took over and instilled some of these life lessons and etc. Children, they can fall between the cracks for many reasons. But the reason why I'm pointing this out is because that's also how I feel about it too. Many of these things that should have been taught to me maybe through the education system or family or life experiences, they came through gaming instead. And I think that's why it's so really important that we talk about it in this episode, and that other people can also realize maybe or relate that they too got a lot of information or learned a lot of things from life from gaming.
especially during Corona, when everyone was in quarantine and people couldn't go out that often, or social events were cancelled because of social distancing and other stuff, curfew or so. So it became harder to socialize during COVID, but it also basically opened the door for other ways, like for example gaming, to new people. And one thing I was thinking about was something that we say kind of often in this podcast is a child is raised by the village. No,
Mm-hmm.
it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah,
That's
and in the modern day village also has gaming in it.
Yeah, well, gaming is part. Yeah, exactly. It consists of it. It is where you find your tribe very often for many people, right? It's not the entry to the bar to entry, as I know you will talk about a little bit later, is so very low for gaming. It's how I ended up being a gamer. It's a bit how you ended up being a gamer too.
And it's
And
how the two of us met.
and it's how the two of us met. And I think that we don't have enough conversations about this. What we're told in society for the last 30 years is that gaming produces violent children. And GTA 5 was so violent, and we blah blah blah. But in reality, that's not true. We all know that, right? There's no data that supports those things. We know that for a fact. We've studied this for the last 30 years. So all those claims that were said that way are not true. They've been debunked, but you still hear people say it. So I think for us, right? You tell me if I'm incorrect here, Udo. But really, we would like to get out the other side of that opinion, and that is that look, gaming also is a way of life for so many people, and a lot of us, we don't relate to what we were told about us in the media, that we go out to become violent individuals. If anything, we relate to the exact opposite, don't we? We relate it to community, to friends being there when we had it really difficult. We relate it to a place you can go when you're feeling depressed or with anxiety or you don't have a lot of friends. We relate it to growing, learning, community, having fun. All these things are part of our life experience now. And the people who were writing these articles did not share our background. They were not born with a keyboard in hand. They were not born gamers. They're outsiders looking at from the outside in, and they got us quite wrong, I think. So this episode, hopefully, will make people relate a little bit more to and hear that, oh man, there are other people out there who have the similar or relatable experience to me, and I feel like this viewpoint is more in line with what my life was like as a listener, instead of what you've been told that you're a violent criminal to be, just ready to explode like a C4 walking around. But that's laughable, right? We all know that's not the case.
Instead of exploding, the only thing I do on ARAM when I play League is like emoting all the time. And I love it when the enemy team like we're supposed to like kill each other in game, but when the enemy team is joining in, and then all 10 people are just emoting with each other and then randomly flashing and doing just some stupid shit.
Yeah. Because the
It's just
community
about
is more
fun.
important.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we value community and we value the connection, that we are having a nice moment there, to the point where we're even not technically following the rules of the game anymore.
Yeah.
But it happens all the time, doesn't it? Right? Why do we feel that need to communicate that? Why do we feel the need to do these things? I think that is underrepresented, not talked about enough, and it's a real phenomenon. It's a real thing we do every single day. Every day we have some interaction with people that were unexpected or really fun, or right?
Yeah, and sometimes just do it for fun. It doesn't always have to be like really try hard.
No, exactly. But
Especially
that
when
shows
you're
to me. Sorry, go ahead.
especially when you're like stressed out from work, you just want to go home and relax a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, just do some trolling online.
Exactly. And it even happens in all games, right? It doesn't just happen in League of Legends. It happens in StarCraft 2, where you load into the game and you say, okay, no rush first 10 minutes, so that the two people can then just do an arms race and then have the World War III going on. That's like kids, That's like kids, just growing up to say, don't attack me and I won't attack you. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
we'll smash our Legos together at the end of it. It's like that. It's
Exactly.
see how much carnage we can create inside of this game, But it's all great fun.
Yeah, it's learning about how to socialize.
It is. And to go back to what you were talking about, you said you learn how to invest money, how to budget. Just to stay with those two real quick, how did you learn about that inside of League of Legends or in gaming in general? How did you learn how to invest money and how to budget?
Okay. So in League, there's something called jungling. Can you explain that real quick?
Sure. So on one of the game modes, on one of the maps, you have different lanes that you have to go into. So each person, there are 5 people on a team, as we mentioned. Each person gets a lane, except for bottom lane and one position called the jungle. So bottom lane has 2 people, an ADC and a support. And then you also have a jungler who goes through the jungle to collect gold. So that person is no longer in the lane, but their job is to collect gold and watch over their teammates and help them, what's called ganking. Ganking is when you come in into the lane and you kill the enemy player. And you do this to make them fall behind, because once you die, you have a little bit of a death timer, which means you cannot play the game, which means your team falls behind, and particularly you fall behind.
Yeah, and jungling is basically all about in investing your time either in the bottom lane, the mid lane, or the top lane. And you have to really watch your players, watch your teammates, and see how they are playing. And for example, if you look at one of your players and he's playing in a very easy champion like Alistar, for example, and he can't even do his combo right. Like you only had one job, like do this combo, and you've watched him over and over again that he failed his combo. Then you know, like you're not going to gank him. You don't. You're not going to waste your time helping this guy because you know he's going to mess up. So you would rather want to invest your time because your time is valuable into other lanes that help you and your team win the game. And in terms in real life or in terms of investing in stocks, for example, you also have to watch the company and see how they are playing the game, quote unquote. So, for example, during the dot-com bubble, there were a lot of companies that only invested in advertising or mainly in advertising instead of actually improving their product or the way the product is manufactured so they can save money. But if you see something like that, even if internet stocks are like really in the hype right now or back then during the dot-com bubble, then you still have to think like the way this company operates, it's just stupid. It doesn't make sense. So don't invest your money in them. Not investing advice, by the way, for legal reasons. And there's basically the analogy. Like, don't invest in something that is hyped right now. And in League, it's don't gank a lane just because that champion is meta right now. Just because he has a high win rate right now. But you have to actually look at the player and how they are playing the game.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good advice too. It's just like how if you are going to invest in a business, you're looking at the people who are running that business. What choices and decisions are they making? Are they trying to invest a lot of money, meaning they have low cash flow, or do they keep a lot of cash flow so that they are more versatile and stable and can adjust to the market needs? And what you're saying there is that if you're going into a lane to try to help somebody who doesn't know how to help themselves very well, you and the team benefit more overall if you then go into a different lane and help someone actually try to get a kill for somebody who do know their rotation of combo and do know how to maybe potentially secure that kill. And what you're saying is sacrificing that one guy who needs a little bit of learning to do is overall a benefit for your team and of course particularly yourself. A big key of what you're saying there is that you also have to be able to be useful as a jungler. And if you go into a lane and you don't get that kill, you don't share that kill gold, which means you don't buy extra items, which means you cannot be as effective in helping other lanes. So you have to kind of snowball, if I'm understanding you correctly, that you need those kills to gain that extra gold so that you have an advantage next time you go into kill and you try to make that snowball further and further and further.
Yeah, in real life, it's the same with stocks. For example, my strategy is like right now I'm buying stocks, and when they are when I profit from them, like I don't know in 5 or 10 years or so, then I will sell them and then buy a house for my wife and children. And
Yep.
that's basically like the thing that you just said. Like you as a jungler also have to get something out of it. After doing a good investment, you actually have to use the profits from the investment to keep snowballing, like to do the next best investment, like going a step further, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that is important to learn. What about moving into how you said very quickly how to choose friends that help you grow? Under which circumstances you work best and what goals you have in life? You want to tackle those two? Give me a little bit more detail on what you mean there.
Yeah. How to choose friends that help you grow? Like in League, that's basically like finding a partner um that fits well with you and your playstyle, and you notice that like if the two of you are playing together, like you're pointing out each other's mistakes, for example, so you can actually improve. um you notice that the other guy is just as addicted to a game as you, and therefore both of you like to spend time in the game and improve together. And yeah, in real life, it's the same. Um, Back when I was in college, for example, and I was learning in the library, and I, I was pretty naive, to be honest, back then. And when people would like, there was this one guy that would ask me for help, and I would explain stuff to him, and later we would also do a project together, and it it was so annoying to work with him because like when we were quote unquote working together, basically I was doing everything, and he started talking about anime and politics and this and that, and we would be talking. He would talk with me about that till 3 a.m. or so, and then I was sleep deprived, still a lot of work to do, and the next day he would still ask me like, can you explain this to me? And that was a bad teammate. And I should have noticed that earlier. And yeah, I have to admit, back then I was very naive. But yeah, the next time I wouldn't make the same mistake. And what I'm trying to say with this is like try to find people that actually have the same goals as you, and people that actually want to improve.
Mm-hmm. And in gaming, that was easier to find because you could have a
That's
measurement or a stat or a rank that could objectively tell you when you were improving and if
yeah,
objectively your partner was good for you or not.
yeah, exactly.
Oh. Well, and that's kind of our point a little bit for this podcast today is that we're missing that in real life. But gaming is a great way of teaching us how to apply that and look for it and kind of create that mindset in our heads so that we apply it to real life. Because yeah, God knows we all have had bad friends, that's for sure, or bad teammates or partners. We all made this mistake because there's no manual that comes in life that tells us, hey, you're really compatible with this, or these are the things you probably can't accept as a negative, but from various people because it would not work well with your personality, etc. But we don't know those. We don't know anything about ourselves, so we don't know anything about the other person either. So to find this is really difficult.
That's a really good point. I believe like when we are born, we are kind of like almost like a blank sheet, and we have to write our manuals ourselves.
Yeah.
Because yeah, no one like when you're little, you have no idea who the hell you are. So you have to figure that out, and then figure out who you are, and what you can become in the future, and then go that path.
Yeah, and the problem with writing on that blank slate or sheet is that you're a dummy when you write it the first time because you think that the priorities you have are good priorities and that the things you're willing to accept and not accept are full and complete. And then as you rewrite it as you get older, of course, you realize no, my priorities were incorrect, and these are actually more or less important things that I follow. So
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing to fail the first time, because it's that's basically another life lesson that I have learned. is following a good call is better than wasting time trying to find the perfect call. At the end, you have to make a decision, because otherwise you will just run out of time, and maybe both of the opportunities that you had in the beginning, both of them will just run out. So instead of choosing a good decision, you wasted your time and cannot do neither of them. And in league terms, that's, for example, when jungling, you can either take Baron or Drake, which are big objectives in the game. And what I did oftentimes was like struggling to decide whether I should go for Baron or go for Drake. And in the end, I was wasting too much time contemplating, and the enemy took both of them. So yeah, that was a lose for me.
Yeah.
In real life, that's called analysis paralysis.
Yeah, that's right. Nice. I've wrote a little bit something about that too. That, as we've talked about in this podcast before, whenever you get an option, and that is a good thing because more options is better than less options. But with it always comes regret, because when you have an option, it means you have to sacrifice one over the other, and life is about managing regret. You will have, every time you have an option, you will have a regret. Question is, you're trying to choose the one you will have with the least regret, don't you? But when you are on your deathbed in the future, looking back on your life, make sure that you're choosing the regret you can live with, and then let go of the regret, that was tougher. And in gaming terms, in StarCraft 2 or even in League of Legends, it's the same thing. We all start at timer 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, right? There's nothing. Everybody starts with the same starting money, and everybody starts at the same time. And from that point on, it is about good decision making once you load into the game. And you can, in StarCraft 2, for example, choose to make more workers so that you get more income, which will then produce a larger army. But the con of that is that if you're not putting that money into military, and then the enemy attacks you, you just lose the game, right? So the regret there is trying to find out how much can you possibly get away with, looking at the enemy's base or looking at the enemy's build, and try to figure out when is he going to be strong and want to hit me and duel, and when am I strong, and then you try to figure out how much can I get away with inside of that timer. And since you start at the same time, that is going to have to pay off dividends one way or another, which costs time. But time also means he has more time to build an army as well. So you have to decide these things on what kind of regret, what kind of choices are you making, what can you choose to live with, and what can you not, because you cannot have both. In many games, you cannot have both, like you were deciding there, unless the enemy makes a mistake and they don't decide. Then you can have Dragon and Baron. But in most cases, we agree it should be contention over one, and that is how everybody tries to min-max the most, right? You try to take up.
The thing you just described remind me of people that are going to college for like 5 or 7 or even 10 years without actually going to work. Like in the StarCraft 2 example, it's like building all these workers that produce money, but never actually investing the money into military. In terms of these would be StarCraft 2 terms, and in real life that would be like only going to college, like only learning the theory, but never putting that into practice, and never doing a proper job, quote unquote.
Yeah. And I think this is a lot of what we're talking about now, is that when you're playing video games, one of the benefits you get is that you get many iterations of the same game. You can play the same character if you want, or the same, race if you're playing StarCraft 2. and you just load into the same map and you play game after game after game after game. And what happens is you start establishing kind of a baseline that you know around this time I should afford either this weapon or this building, and around this time, if I'm changing this build or changing that decision, then I can have it a little bit earlier or I can have it a little bit later. And there's pros and cons of these things as well. And what happens is you finish a game. At the end of it, you get all this stats and data, and you get a replay where you get to watch and compare. How was the enemy playing? How was I playing? What did they do well? What did I do well? Where could I have hit earlier? Were there some mistakes maybe in their build where I could have identified something while we were playing and hit him really early and ended the game earlier? And maybe I let him get away with something, or maybe you didn't. But the point is that in real life you don't have these replayability, these iterations, because we don't currently yet have access to our multiverse. We're only still in this one verse, and and once we have that, then we can learn how to min max our decisions. But the problem in real life is that we don't get data back very quickly on the decisions that we make, and sometimes we don't get data back ever. If I went to, you were talking about university degree, and I have a international relations university degree, for example. What if I went for a different degree, or if I didn't go for a degree altogether? What would that have looked like for my life? It would have been changing everything. But since I only live my one life, I will never know what the actual true cost is of the other decision, or as I call them, regrets, right? Because you have to choose, and that means you have to make a sacrifice. And in a gaming, you don't have to do that. You can find out actually what objectively just about is the best decision, and then you just try to chase that as good as you can. And the better you get at predicting this, not after the game, but while you're doing the game, the better of a player you would become. Or in real life, maybe the more successful investor you would become.
I think reviewing your games is really important. And in real life, that's basically like reflecting on your life choices. Sitting down and thinking about what were the past months like. Like, did things go well? Did things not go well? Or just like talking to a friend and you guys like call each other and then catch up. Like, hey, bro, how's life doing? How are you doing right now? And that's basically the real life game review in my opinion, because
Yeah.
that's where you reflect on things, and reflecting on things is really important because like the strategy that you're running right now might not be the best.
Yeah.
So that's where you should be realizing what your mistakes are, what are things that you can do better, and a good friend will just tell you straight to the face, dude, you're doing some really stupid stuff right now. Stop that.
Yeah, a good friend would say that. And I think it's important too that we think about this, because in our busy lives nowadays, introspection is something we leave for the religious people, or we leave for the yoga people, or we leave for all these woo-woo people. But in reality, maybe we all should sit and introspect a significant bit more than we probably are, because as you've mentioned before, if you have a really fast car but it's driving in the wrong direction, it doesn't matter that you've min-maxed. If anything, it means you're just heading in the wrong direction faster. Instead, what you need maybe is introspection and a slower car, but with the correct introspection, you can make better decisions, which then will lead you to an objectively better, uh, goal or cause or reason for doing whatever it is that you're doing.
And that's very important because that's exponential growth versus linear growth.
Yeah.
Going full speed in the same direction and never reflecting whether you are going in the right direction. That's linear growth, just a little bit faster. But as everyone knows, exponential growth sooner or later beats linear growth. So you have to take your time and reflect on things. And for me, for example, it's easier when I have someone to talk to, because the other person can look at my decisions from a third person perspective, and then tell me like, yeah, what I'm doing wrong or whether that's good or not.
Yeah.
And we could be figuring out things together. And I'm remembering right now a story from an old man in my village. He was like, I don't know, 75 or so when I met him, and he had one son. And when I met him, I was like at his garden, and he was picking up apples. And he told me he would have loved to for his son to come back more often and pick up some apples with him
Mhm.
or do something together. But he was a like that old man was a bus driver throughout Europe, so he didn't spend much time with his family because he was always at work, sometimes for months. So it was difficult for him. But in his mind, he was basically a fast car going faster in the analogy, that he was only doing one thing, doing that really well, but never slowing down, sitting down, and contemplating whether the thing he's doing is the best and if that's really what he wants in life. And at the end, well, he had regrets. And a lot of people have, I feel like a lot of people have similar regrets where they're like, maybe I should not have chased the money. Maybe family was more important, but they only realized kind of late.
Yeah. I think that's really common that people live a full life, get to the end, and have some significant regrets. I learned this installing these alarms that are for old people or handicapped people who fall and they can't get up and they need a little bit of assistance. And they press this, in America they call it a life alert. It's like a little button that you have around on a necklace that you press, and it goes to your alarm, and then that alarm goes to some social worker who will then get reported out to the address, and then they will come and help the individual. And so I have a lot of experience talking to a lot of people who are frankly not around anymore because they were people with failing health or failing or handicaps, etc., that they were not able to take care of themselves. And I asked this question quite a bit. How do I lead a good life? What are things I should really really be careful? And they all said the same thing essentially, and that is be careful which regret you choose, because you're gonna have regrets. Just make sure you can live with the ones you choose. So I have lived that way for a great many years since then, and thankfully it served me really well. That I always think about. I always RP and imagine myself as an old person and thinking, if I look back, what would I consider being a good life? Which the path that seems, because you don't have all the perfect knowledge, as we said. In a game, at the end of the game, you have perfect data on how much gold you collected and how much, this, that, and the other that you did. But in life, it's a little bit simpler. You just have to try to do the best you can, gather as much information about your decision as you can, and then make that choice, and then try to never look back or regret it. Easier said than done, but c'est la vie, such is life. You have to kind of figure that out, because no one comes with a manual. But
I've
mm,
I figured a manual for myself.
what's your
No,
manual?
I yeah. For me, that's kind of the algorithm that I apply. It's three questions. The first question is, what would you do with a million euros? And the second question is, what are your goals? And the third question is, what makes you happy in life? And the purpose of this is these are three things that are kind of important to figure out, and most people go the other way around in asking themselves these questions. Like, for example, the bus driver story that I told earlier. He was first thinking about the money, and when it was too late, he was thinking about the goals or the things that makes him happy. And I think it's better to go the other way around. And first, ask yourself, what are the things that makes you truly happy in life? Then you choose goals that align with the things that make you happy, because obviously the goals that you have should make you happy, and not someone else. So, something that happens quite often as well is that we choose goals that don't make us happy, but for example make our parents happy, or that are aligned with society or so. And after that, we think about the question of money. Like, if these are my goals, then how do I make money with that? How can I finance my goals? And for me, for example, the thing that makes me happy the most are family. So I want to have children, and therefore one of my goals is like to build a stable life that can nurture, can feed my wife and children. It's pretty much a very conservative goal, but that's what I genuinely want. And what I've seen quite a few times is that some people, they, on the surface, they might have the same goal as me, but they just do it because society wants them to do so. But like, I'm 27 years old right now, but I've been thinking about my future children since I was 21, 22 or so. Like, always imagining how it would be when I would piggyback my children, or when I hold them. I like I have notes on my computer, for example, things that I want to tell my children in the future, or life lessons that I want to share with them, or quite a lot of things. Because even though they are not born yet, I think about them all the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. A term comes to mind when you were talking about all this, and it's a Japanese term called ikigai. Ikigai is a reason for being. It's a Japanese concept referring to something that gives a purpose, or a sense of purpose and a reason for living. And I think the Japanese are, as they are amazing in so many things, yet again, they put a word on something that we are really awful at in the Western world. I think if we had a word like ikigai, we would wrap our head around this concept significantly easier. And that's what you're talking about there, right? Is that if you're going the reverse way, instead of going, I want to be a millionaire when I grow up, instead going, I want to do X, Y, or Z, regardless of it, if it makes me money. And then from there backwards, try to figure out, okay, can I make this pay my bills? And if the answer is yes, well, that's your ikigai. That's probably your sense of purpose, something that gives you a happiness, some goals, and a sense of purpose and a reason for continuing this life. And then the money and everything else comes secondary to that. We in the Western world, we do the exact opposite, right? We are, like you're saying, looking at society, seeing what's available, and then we try to aim for that as a most good or most high or the most income or most best life, quote unquote, for whatever you think might be your forte or your interest. But
Yeah.
if you're doing it backwards instead, you will find fulfillment in life. You'll find what life is really, really, really about. And we don't teach this in the Western world, but the Japanese, they do. And I think we're making a mistake there by not having a word such as ikigai for us. It's a motivating force. It's something that, propels people forward. So it gives pleasure, fulfillment. I mean, these things are the spice of life, are they not?
And having a word for it makes it more. It makes it easier to grasp.
Yes, absolutely. And it gives you a concept that you can just say to other people and they will know. But we can't say that. I can't say ikigai to another Westerner. They would be like, what do you mean? So we're so far away from understanding not only the concept of the word, but we don't even have the word. We don't have an equivalent word. So we are quite far away from figuring out some simple things in life that other cultures have figured out a long, long, long time ago. And I wanted to say that in these games, we kind of skipped past it, but it's really important, for at least for me, that we hammer home this thing that I used to really think that I wasn't that smart. The reason why was because I got really poor grades because I had a bit of a rough childhood growing up. And now as an adult, I realized that I was not set up for success, and it had very little to do with me and my mind, but everything to do with my surrounding context and everything growing up. But I didn't really figure out, because I kind of got bad test scores my whole life. I kind of got in my mind proof that I wasn't that smart, or proof that I'm not very good at this, or proof that I have a problem learning things or retaining things, or it is proof that things are not working out well when you get bad test scores. And that was me. I kept getting that confirmed to me over and over and over and over again. And I just realized, I just made it my thing that, okay, I'm a stupid person because stupid people don't get good test grades, and I'm not going to go to Harvard because I don't qualify, and etc. So, but then I realized as I was gaming, but how come I can be quite proficient at playing various games where I end up on world leaderboards and world rankings, and I did this in at least 3 games that I've played in my life, where I ended up, being on a world leadership board of some kind of capacity, and I realized, but okay, so I'm not so stupid, because I don't think I could end up on the ranking of the world, even if it's for a short period of time and the ranking is not very high, but still, it does put me in a different kind of percentile than other people. And I realized that, the difference here is that at the end of the game, I'm very good at discerning the data that is given to me, and I internalize it, and then I learn from it, and the next time I load into the game, I try to reduce those mistakes. And if you do enough iterations of this, eventually you have a gameplay that is not problem-free or fault-free, but significantly more optimized and more iterated. And that meant I could do really, really well inside of the game. And I realized, okay, but then maybe I can apply this then to studying and learning as well. If I just go through the material many iterations of the time, it's not like I had a learning disability. It's just that I had kind of a poor memory, and I also had a bit of a difficult time applying sometimes what I had learned into a test format, because I'm not very good at testing. So I also learned that particular medium is also not a medium I'm as good at as many other things. But in life, you learn, and I learned this too, that everything is a skill. And even if you're not good at something, quote unquote, you think, oh man, I will never be able to do that. You can always improve, even if you will never become as good as, quote unquote, a pro, or maybe someone who is a good test taker. You can still always improve from the position you're standing in. And that's really, really something I learned from gaming, is that many of the things I thought I couldn't do inside of the game, because I watched pros do them, but then 3, 4, 5 years later, I had improved so many small things that I was playing, quote unquote, close to their level, which means I had to start doing similar things that they were doing at their level. And guess what? It's not such a big gap now anymore. You've iterated over years and years and years and made all these small mistakes smaller and smaller, that you now get to work on this issue, which is something you thought maybe you were never going to work at because you were never going to play at such a high level. But you get there, and you get there quickly as long as you keep doing these iterations and try to reduce your mistakes based on the data you get at the end of the game. So I don't know how you make this real life necessarily, because you kind of can't take the same test 1,000 times, which would be the same analogy there. But you can go over material and read the material in different ways, and view it in different angles, and interpret the data differently, and that'll give you a much higher sense of understanding of the task at hand, whether it is a game or a test or anything that you're trying to do well in your life.
Yeah, I would say this is another fundamental in the game of life, that all skills need practice. And the most important thing is that you practice consistently and improve yourself consistently. And after some time, it's kind of like you wake up and then you look at yourself and you're like, wait a minute, I'm way better than I was before. And hold on, wait a minute, I'm getting closer to my idols, like the pro players that I'm watching, or the soccer players that I'm watching, Cristiano Ronaldo or so. And that's what it's about, like improving yourself. That's what exponential growth is about. Always finding ways to improve yourself, always reviewing your gameplay and trying to fix things.
Yeah, and reviewing and going over priorities too. Look at your gameplay or look at your decision making in real life and go over it, and realize, okay, was that the best decision to make at the time? Was that did that pay off as I thought it would? If the answer is no, then revisit it and see if you need to make a different decision in the future, or if you need to think about it differently. And that will yield different results.
And this is a way of thinking that applies universally. Like it doesn't only apply to games; it also applies to playing an instrument, playing a sport, or whatever, any skill that you want to learn. And that's something that I will tell my kids as well. Like for me, I don't care if they will want to become a soccer player um, or they want to play the violin or so. What matters is that they put the time and effort in to improve themselves. I, for example, I've never played an instrument. I've no idea about that. And
Big Asian
if
confirmed.
confirmed.
Yeah.
But also, when I was in college, I was studying physics, so nothing with music or anything like that. I listened to rap music, so no violin needed, I guess. And if my children want to like be a professional violin player, like
Violinist.
yes, thank you, sir. Um, that's good with me, as long as they put in the discipline, they put in the hard work, because I know exactly that this these fundamentals in life are the most important thing, and the details is basically what they are doing, whether they're playing violin or soccer uh, or they are a gaming YouTuber or streamer or whatever. They will find success as long as they follow the fundamentals.
And keep practicing too. Keep doing these iterations that we talked about, I think about this all the time as well. I also, if I were to have children, it would be also one of my great life lessons, and that is to make my children realize that Mother Nature is kind of it's wonderful, but it's also cruel. It doesn't really take into account us. It doesn't take into account anybody, but to anything other than Mother Nature. That's all Mother Nature takes care of is Mother Nature shit. Okay, but I talk about running a lot, right? And I think that when I go to whenever I book one of these half marathon, for example, and I schedule one or so plus a year, I keep these because they're really, really, really difficult. It's me versus Mother Nature. It's me versus running. It is not me competing against anybody else, but really it's just me trying to do something that is objectively quite difficult. It requires quite a few hours to do, and it requires a lot of preparation and a lot of stamina and muscle mass to build up, and that takes a significant amount of time. And I noticed that as long as I keep running and I keep trying to improve there, other things in my life, such as my career or my friendships or relationships, etc., everything becomes relatively much, much easier because I'm staying true to kind of nature, meaning it is not me living in a nerfed society that think that there's always a company that or somebody that you can sue in case something happens and that society will somehow just take care of me. But rather, I think that it should be you versus Mother Nature and doing difficult things no matter what they are, and then taking that as a skill and then trying to improve upon that skill will give you an incredible amount of things that you are going to get out of it as far as life goes. It's gonna, make it a little bit easier to do other things that you would have otherwise thought were difficult. But because running is more difficult, everything is relative, and you may have to do some more running just to put the rest of your psyche and body into a more normal state. And I use the word there, nerf, for those who are not native English speakers. Nerfing means you are removing all the jagged edges of the world. When you're nerfing your home, for example, when you have a young child, what you're doing is you're putting these little corner stoppers so that the child can't bang their head against the sharp corner and cut their head. You're making sure that doors cannot be opened by the child so that they cannot get things that are inside there that are not made for them. And when you do this, you nerf the world. And I think that my point is that in society, we do the same thing as well. We have insurances that will cover you in case you ruin your car, so you don't have to buy a brand new car because it's expensive. And if you lose your job, you have some kind of welfare system that will make sure that you can still, at least for a couple of months, pay for your rent while you get back on your feet. All these things make it so that we are no longer living in the real world, because the real world is really difficult and really tough. It is one where wild animals live. And if you nerf the world too much, you might start to believe that this is society. You ever watch someone who has a complete mental breakdown over something that you might consider quite simple or quite trivial or not that important, but they scream at the top of their lung like they're getting murdered anyway? To
You mean
me,
a Karen?
yeah, Karen is a perfect example. To me, these are people who have lived in the nerfed world for too long. And as I said, everything is relative. So the most difficult or the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. Whether that is falling out of an airplane, without a parachute, or if that means getting your, the nicest car you've ever had get dinged up and you don't have money to pay for it, right? The worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. So as long as you do very difficult things in life that are relatively difficult for you, they should be. You should be able to build a confidence on them. Okay, they should not be so difficult that you cannot complete them. If that's the case, you're biting off too much to chew, and you should make your challenge simpler so that you can constantly win over the challenge. You should win over the challenge significantly more often than you lose over it. That's what you should make your challenge of relative difficulty, where it has a little bit of a bite and it's not easy mode, going through life on easy mode, but it also shouldn't be where you get demotivated and feel like I'm never gonna get anywhere. It should feel like progress as you do it. So that's why I recommend running. Running, it always gives you some kind of progress, because even if you don't run the best, which happens all the time, every run you do is not faster than your last run. And that's just not how running works. But every run you put in has those kilometers or miles on your legs, and that does yield something for your next run. You cannot avoid it. It's just going to be given to you. If you put in the work, you will get some results out of it. And I think that's exactly what this is. As long as you keep iterating and doing, and then introspectively looking at your decisions, and then try to improve from there, and do something that's relatively difficult, you will have on average, I think, an okay life, a good life, maybe even, if you're lucky.
I would say it puts you in the driver's seat. It creates the right mindset. If we compare, for example, the mindset of a Karen, whose surrounding has basically been nerfed, versus a person who's like constantly searching new challenges that are hard, difficult, that they are not capable of doing right now, but they still try to do it. If we compare these two mindsets, then I'm way more confident that the latter will be more successful in life.
Yeah. There is that interesting psychology experiment that you put children in this room and you put like a little cupcake or something or a cake in front of them, and then you leave the room, you know, and you're a person of authority, and you tell them, you know, maybe you're wearing a lab coat or whatever, and you tell the child, if you don't, I'm going to be back in 5 minutes. If you don't eat this piece of cake, you will get 2 pieces when I come back. But you know, it's up to you essentially, and I'll be back in 5 minutes, and then they disappear. And they found that children who were a bit introspective, who were thinking about their choices, who were trying to make the correct choice, meaning if they were going to eat the cupcake now and get 1, or if they're going to eat 2 cupcakes in 5 minutes. And they found that the people who chose the second cupcake and thereby waiting also had a higher, on average, income and socioeconomic status going later in their life as well. So that was data. I forgot the name of the study. I apologize. You can Google this on your own. But it should be pretty easy to find this. It's a very famous study.
But that's a prime example of delayed gratification.
Yeah, and it's a proof of someone who's also lived maybe with this decision or thought about this decision before, that okay, 2 cupcakes is significantly better than 1, but there is a cost to it. And yeah, it's a relatively difficult challenge, but it is one that they can complete. A child can sit there and go 5 minutes without taking the cupcake. But on the other hand, it is a relatively difficult thing that they can surpass, and those who do surpass that difficulty are rewarded in life. It turns out that is the right way of thinking. If you want to have a better life and success in your life, that is anyway.
That's also a good approach. Like people should think about things first, and then act them out, and not like doing them and then realizing, oh shit, I messed up. I think like a lot of OnlyFans girls do that, for example, selling their nudes for $5 per month online, and then realizing they don't earn enough money with it, so it
Yeah.
wasn't worth it.
Yeah, it's really common that they're coming out with data now that shows that a lot of people who did start an OnlyFans spent the effort to become, you know, a nude a nude model. They were saying that because there's so many people who are doing this, you have to lower your price to stay competitive. But if you're not super famous, at the end of the day, what happens is you're selling your nudes for $5 a piece, maybe, and you've sold your entire dignity for $5. That's what ends up happening. You only make money if there's a lot of purchasers, but when it's really watered down, and there are a lot of people who are, you know, most people are probably not going to have several OnlyFans subscriptions. Maybe they'll have 1 or 2. You know, you're competing for the best. You're competing against the best OnlyFans model there is, and those people at the very top, they make a significant amount of money. But I think most people who are at the lower end very quickly end up quitting, realizing that it's definitely not worth selling my entire dignity, and only when I've made a net $150, and that's 15 whatever people buying it for $5 a piece, or whatever model you have. You know, that math doesn't end up making sense a lot.
So you're trying to tell me that I should quit my OnlyFans?
Yes. Either that or somehow get a lot of purchasers, and then, you know, $5 is a good marketing number then at that point, because people probably won't buy it for 10, but if you have a lot of people buying it for 5, you know, you got a business model. I don't know. Maybe stick with it. Maybe don't listen to me. Your fans are out there, Udo. They just don't know you yet.
No. Don't make me delusional, man.
Yeah, and
I
I
don't
think,
have it OnlyFans.
of course not. We're joking. I was thinking what you were saying, that the introspection for these decisions, you would also try to put them through your prior experience. So, you know, if we're talking about playing the game, it would be after the game you've learned what your measurements were, you take that into the next game. So ideally, that's what you do with this as well. You iterate, try to think about when you've been into these decision-making positions before, what you regretted, what you didn't regret, and make a decision from there, hopefully with that in mind.
Now that I think about it, that's actually another life lesson that I wrote down. Is if the stars have to align for your strategy to work, it's not a good main strategy. So with the OnlyFans example, for example, it's basically the OnlyFans strategy is basically everything has to go well, really well, and then it's worth it. But for most people, that's not the case. This doesn't apply.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, most people are statistically not going to hit that lucky Goldilocks zone. We know that.
Yeah, most people aren't the 1%.
They're not. They're not the exception. Most people are not the exception to the rule.
Yeah, so they shouldn't have that as their main strategy. As boring as it sounds, but for most people, it's probably just a normal 9-to-5 job.
Yup. Unless, ideally you come up with something like, I'm not saying come up with a podcast. What I'm saying is come up with something that yields something. And in our case, it was a podcast, right?
Yeah,
But
and hopefully at some point this will make enough money. But right now, that's not the main strategy for neither of us. So
Yeah.
both of us are still working full time.
Yep. And our strategy is to sit here, have good conversations, get an excuse to have a good time to sit down and talk to you. And we have a good time doing it regardless of the outcome. So we've already won. By us sitting here making this podcast and by you sitting here listening to this podcast, that completes our entire dream for this podcast. And then everything else, it's not a strategy. So it is not our main strategy. It's not good strategy. We're not doing any of those things. But, luck is when preparation meets opportunity, no? And if we're preparing and we're making all these episodes, maybe one day, you never know, someone really likes it and they mention us or something. And then that is preparation meets opportunity and that creates luck. So, but yeah, if we had the main strategy of making this podcast so that we can quit our jobs as soon as possible and also we can, become huge and famous, I think we would be demotivated and quit podcasting before we ever get to either of those two. The goal has to be reversed, as we've said. It has to come from the deductive or deductive versus inductive. It has to come from the other way, meaning we only record these podcasts because they're really fun for us and we're happy with whatever comes out, even if we get no listeners. But at the same time, it could lead to something else. We're open to it leading to something else. We're preparing for it to lead to something else, but it is not our main strategy.
But if that something else is coming, then we will be prepared.
We will be prepared and we will welcome it and we will consider it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of goes into my next little point, which is that when do you use gaming as a negative thing, right? How do you know if you're gaming too much, or how do you know if you're following our advice or listening to what we're saying versus just casually pissing away hours of gaming time, And I think for me, the way I learned the difference was two things. One, I learned that whenever I start playing really bad, and it's like a lot of games in a row, and I start playing bad, I know it's a time for me to take a couple of days off, just so that I can start appreciating the game again when I come back. And ironically, I always play better when I come back. That's one of my telltale signs. But the second one is when I use it as an escape. I think a lot of people are going to dread what I'm about to say because a lot of us, we use it as an escape. Gaming is a great escape for a lot of people, just like watching Netflix and binging is a great escape for a lot of people. But you want to really focus on making sure that you get something out of your gaming that is positive and and useful in life, I think. Otherwise, you're just escaping and you're avoiding dealing with the issues. And I kind of liken it to thinking about like a roller coaster. So roller coasters are really fun at the moment, but they're not that much fun to talk about after. Why is that? Because they're really fun while we're doing it. You get a surge of adrenaline, but at the end of it, what is there really to talk about too much? There isn't really that much to talk about if you take the case of a roller coaster. Ah, was it fun? Yeah, it was fun. Did you have more fun than the last one? Yes or no? And then that's the end of it. Really, what else are you going to describe? But I found that things that are really difficult at the time of doing it, the ones that really suck, are quite the opposite. They're the ones that are really, really fun to talk about later. Those are the memories that you care about and you really want to share. Remember that one time we went camping and it just rained for 4 days? Yeah, that sucked, right? Everything was wet and that was awful. But, remember we had this conversation, or remember when you lit this thing on fire, or whatever. And you'll realize that you have a lot of good things to think back and laugh about. And that's a lot of what gaming can also be for some people. If it is an escape to you, you'll find that you can piss away easily 10 years if you want to, just gaming and not getting social skills, not getting experiences, not traveling, not hanging out with friends. And that cost is extremely, extremely high. Take it from someone who sits with, me myself as well. I also am still developing socially on some of the things that I'm lacking, or maybe I'm underdeveloped as a result of spending too much time online and not with people who could make me grow as a person. Experiences are the key to life. Material things are not. We know for a fact that buying a new sports car will we will get a surge of dopamine for a couple of days, couple of weeks, but we also know that our human bodies are great to adapting, and that is exactly what it does. It adapts to the new normal. So a few days, a few weeks after you've had this sports car that you've always dreamt about, you will take it for granted. That's what happens. If you buy a new big house, you move in there 6 months later, 1 year later, you're not even thinking about the old house. You're not even thinking about any of those things. To you, it is just your house. To you, it is just your car. It's a nice car. Maybe it's a nicer car than your neighbor's, but it still is just a car. What do you use it for? You drive, And we want to be careful. We know in psychology that experiences are what gives you life and purpose. And traveling can be a great one for this, because traveling makes memories that are not part of the norm, which means you will have more things to remember and think back on in your life. And it also seems to be the thing that the people I told you about earlier, the people who are older, they all said that. I never regretted traveling, never. Even when there were bad scenarios and bad cases, as long as you make out of them okay and you don't die or anything, you will have a great story to tell, and it will be a great memory, and you will learn. You will get self-confidence for it. You will learn that you're more capable than you think. You will learn that you're smarter than you think. You will learn so many different things about not only yourself, how to survive, but also other people as well. And unfortunately, you can't get some of these things out of gaming. You can get great experiences, but they're not going to be standing out because they're not going to be memorable, because they're going to be on the same map with probably the same people you normally play with, or other people that you will never play with again. In either case, they're not significant enough to be spending a bunch of time there. So be conscientious with your gaming. Don't sit down and make a habit out of it and then not know why you're doing it. If you know why you're doing it and the answer is, oh, because it's fun, okay, that's good enough. That's it. Just know that that's the category you're in. Fun doesn't have to lead to an outcome. Fun doesn't have to be productive. Fun is just fun. And if you're spending time having fun, that is never wasted time. Never wasted time to spend time on fun. Don't let any partner convince you otherwise. But the moment you forget why you're doing it, that's when you should have that introspection and really consider, should I stop playing games for a little while? Or should I start finding a reason for why I'm playing the game? Is it to become better? Is it to learn something? Is it to hit a rank? Whatever you set out to do, make sure it's more than just mindlessly like turning on a TV and then turning off your brain. That's probably the worst thing you can do, and it's really easy to lose your life this way. Meaning, you can spend 10, 15, 20 years easily just on autopilot, coming home from work, coming home from school, and just every day you turn on the computer, you load into some games, and you don't even know why. So
Yeah, to be honest, that was me for like 4 or 5 years.
it's me for more than that, I can tell you. This is why I'm saying this, because I know everybody has to put their hand on the stove and burn themselves before they learn. But listen, if you can somehow learn from, well, you heard it, 100% of us, we've done it, and it's years. It's years you're never gonna get back. So ideally, don't cost yourself your precious time. Your most important thing you have in life is not money; it's your health. And the second most important thing after your health might be time. And so think about the cost that you're giving gaming, and that comes from someone who is the main gamer. I consider this that I will never stop gaming for the rest of my life. So, but I also do it conscientiously. I also know that when I should stop playing the game, and I take actions to stop and hinder myself from playing those games if I deem it that I should not.
Oh, you know what you just said right now? It kind of sounds like an alcoholic telling someone else to not drink alcohol while you have a bottle of vodka in your hand.
Yeah, imagine how many people are playing one of these two games as they're listening to this podcast right now. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, listen, I'm not trying to take away your gaming. Absolutely not. In fact, if this podcast is about one thing, it is that the benefits of gaming far, in my opinion, outweigh the cost of gaming. But just like anything, you can have a hammer, you can build a house, you can also use a hammer to destroy a house. Be conscientious about your decisions. That's all. That's all we're saying. Yeah.
Once you got the fundamentals, focus on perfecting your playstyle. So when you figured out the basics, when you figured out in which direction you want to go, then try to min-max. I have an example of a jiu-jitsu fighter. His name is Mikey Musumeci. And in terms of diet, people often debate what kind of diet you should take. Like some people are talking about the low carb diet or carnivore diet or so, only eating meat. And this guy is an Italian jiu-jitsu fighter, and he's only eating pizza and pasta every day. And some people might say, oh, so where does your protein come from? Usually protein comes from meat, right? And he's getting his protein from cheese instead. And it has been working well for him. And what he's doing is he's training every day, fighting every day, and at the end of the day, he would just make a giant bowl of pasta with lots of cheese, and then eat that, and then go to sleep, repeat every day. And you can he was on Joe Rogan, so you can check him out. And what I'm trying to say here is everyone has to find out under which circumstances they work the best. And for example, John Peterson, he's on the carnivore diet, so he's only eating like steak and with a little bit of salt and then water. And Mikey Musumeci is basically the opposite, like only eating carbohydrates. That has been working really well for him. And for you yourself, you have to figure out as well under which circumstances, with which diet you work the best. For
Yep.
example, I figured that in the morning I need some sugar, like something sweet, like a coffee or a donut or whatever. And in the evening, I shouldn't be eating too much because I have the habit of eating very slowly, and when I eat too much, then I just feel tired, really tired, and then I can't do shit.
Yep. When I go for a run, that's something that's all runners. If you're doing a half marathon or longer, you cannot run without consuming food, because you don't have enough glycogen storage in your body that will survive, 2 hours plus for a half marathon if you're a slow runner like myself. But and that's something that you're going through as you're learning running, because when you first start running in school, for example, most people's introduction to running is their physical training, right? They're part of some kind of testing for the school environment to do some physical exercise. And like everybody, you start off running and you hate it. I hated it as well. But the more you continue doing it, the more you get better at it, and eventually you start running for an hour or more. And they start telling you, well, if you're going to run for more than an hour, you're going to want to consider consuming some kind of food, and of course liquids as well. But most people are used to consuming liquids when they run, even if they don't run, even if they're not runners, because we drink liquids when we go to the gym. That part's easy and figured out. But consuming food while in active running and active movement is really not as simple as it sounds. It sounds like you would just, oh, well, I know how to eat. We eat every day. So just put it in your mouth and chew it. But that's not what happens when you're running, and particularly not in the beginning. You have to get your stomach used to what works for your stomach and what doesn't work. And everybody's very, very different. Some people want to replenish their glycogen or glucose with dates. For example, they find that eating dates give you a good boost in your stomach and it's easy to digest. Other people take gel capsules. Other people mix it with tablets in their water to get the same effect. Other people do maybe gels and they just squirt them into their mouth and they squirt some water in and they swallow it. Or some people eat a banana, for example, but other people find that banana is really a hard texture and too difficult to consume, and it doesn't sit well, and it creates kind of a cramp for some people. And everybody's different. Everybody finds out the answer to their own body differently. You have to consume a bunch of various different kinds of things to figure out what does your body really work well on. How do I run the best? And for me, after 9 years of experimenting, it took me 9 years, I have finally figured out that my body works the best when I eat pasta 2 hours before my long run. And if I say that to other runners, their jaws drop. That is not common. Most people would hate to eat pasta consumed before a 2-hour race, and even closer to that, 2 hours before the race. What's very common is runners eat pasta, and they do what's called carb loading, and they eat a lot of pasta, which has a lot of carbs, the night before, and then they use that storage that's been built up overnight, and then they fill up with maybe some faster fuels, a little bit more glycogen, a little bit more sugar-based foods before they run and as they run. And they would find that having a big bowl of pasta in their stomach would be both heavy, and it would probably make them puke, to be really honest with you. But that's not me. That's not me. That's never been the case for me. I found that eating the correct amount of pasta, not too much, about 2 hours, 2 hours and 20 minutes before my race, gives me a perfect amount of energy to have a sustained run. In addition to, of course, I consume gels with a little bit of carbs and a little bit of sugar in it as well as I go for the run too. So I have both that build up and the direct calories to be consumed while I'm running. But it took 9 years to figure out that answer, because most people would, when you ask them what should I do for running, they're not going to tell you this. They're never going to suggest, oh, eat a huge bowl, or not a huge, but eat a significant portion of pasta 2 hours before you go for a run, and that'll sit real well in your stomach. No one says that, but that ended up being the answer for me, and it took me 9 years to get there. So I think about this when you say that.
And I love today's day and age, like people just sharing their experience, sharing their advice, and then others can just listen to it and maybe try it. Like maybe with the mainstream advice, quote unquote, has not worked for me. And right now, to be honest, I'm thinking about trying what you're doing, like eating a big bowl of pasta 2 hours before the run.
Yeah, because what people told me, and a lot of runners do, they say, oh, I just get up in the morning and I put my running shoes on before I have breakfast or anything. Maybe I'll have a coffee and then that's it, and they go for a run, okay? I have tried this. That is the opposite of me. I cannot get any energy in the morning. I'm sluggish. If I don't have food in my belly, I just feel like my stomach is grumbling. I feel tired as I start running before I even get moving. And sure, you wake up a little bit as you're going for the run, but it feels like a trash run because I feel like I have nothing to give the whole time. It just feels like molasses. It feels like I'm running through quicksilver or sand. Yeah, quicksand is what I meant to say. Some kind of quicksand or something. It feels really, really sluggish and slow. But other people are saying, yeah, because then you can then come home and you can take a shower and then you eat your healthy breakfast and you have energy for the whole day. Man, I wish that was the case. Again, I'm not like that. For me, every time I've run, when I lived in Florida, I ran most of my runs were at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, or 3 o'clock in the morning because it was so hot in Florida during the day. And I guess either I'm a night owl, which I am, and I kept that going now 9 plus years later, and I still prefer to run in the evening. But I still prefer to run at like 8 p.m. And I think that's not when people want to run. Most people want to start winding down. And if they would go for a run at 8 p.m., it would become too difficult to have a bunch of liquids inside of you and a shower and cool down and wind down your heart rate over the next period of a couple hours, enough to where you can sleep with a good night rest of sleep. But for me, it's the only time I really, really enjoy running is in the evenings or nights when I know everybody else is sleeping. Don't know why. It's always been that case. So, yeah, I agree with you. Most people's advice was the opposite for me. So maybe imagine somebody listening to this podcast and going, man, no one ever said that to me, because that would be the opposite of what normal advice is. And I agree, but it is what worked for me. So there must be other people who has to be the same. It has to be. And hopefully it doesn't take 9 years for them to figure that out, because no one tells them this. Maybe we just told them just now. Hopefully. And I think for Mike that you're talking about, the jiu-jitsu fighter, he must have gone through something like this. He must have figured out that pasta and pizza every single day is what gives him it's carbs. That's what they have in common. It's a heavy amount of carbs. So he must have figured out what is the most amount of carbs I can kind of consume, and that would yield me a bunch of energy for fighting. And he's correct. But again, I imagine, I'm not a fighter, but I imagine if someone told him what's the most ideal food to have for a fight or for preparing for a fight, I very much doubt they would say pizza and pasta. They would come up with some kind of leaner concoction that still has heavy carbs in it, but it wouldn't be pizza and pasta. I don't think.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier. Everyone has to figure out their own manual. Everyone has to write their own manual, because no one knows at the beginning when they are born. How the hell does my body work? What I am, who I am, and so on. And that's what life is about, and figuring out all of these things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's again why we have this podcast, so that we can try to reduce that education gap between people who never go to university, who will never be introduced to some of this information that we talk about, or people who are looking to min-max and learn from the strategies that we've at least come up with over the years. Not that we have all the answers. If anything, if there are better ways of doing things when we talk about in this podcast, we would love to hear from you guys, listeners. Please let us know on our subreddit what we get right, what we get wrong, and what could further the conversation. And we would be really interested in hearing and continuing the conversation on our subreddit, which is reddit.com/r/Kimudo podcast. Is there anything else you would like to hit on this podcast? Is there something we should talk about, Udo, that we haven't hit on so far? I have one little thing. It goes to a little bit of a different direction, but it is a final little thought that I had based on gaming. But it moves in a different direction. So if we go with mine,
yeah.
Okay, let's do it. So okay. So in with gaming, one of the things that the U.S. military have been doing for the last 20 years or so is poaching some of the fastest reaction speed FPS gamers. I don't know if you know this, to make their drone pilots and their fighter pilots the best in the world. Did you know this?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, so they've been doing this for a great many years because it turns out that gamers train and learn how to have really, really fast reaction speeds, which is really, really important in military combat when you're flying expensive planes and expensive drones, okay? These milliseconds and thousands of a second are really, really important. So for a great many years, they've been taking people and they've even, United States Army even developed a military game. I don't know if you know this, that you can play. And this was the military realizing that there's a direct correlation between gamers and the military. And so anyway, they've been doing this for a great many years, and it's been working out really, really great for putting them in the fighter jets until recently. Now, they have discovered that having the fastest reaction time gamers only worked until about now, as of this recording here in 2024, because now AI have been put into dogfighting with these fighter F-16 pilots and jets, and
What's
it turns
dogfighting?
a dogfighting is when you have two airplanes that are trying to kill each other in flight. And when they do this, it becomes kind of a close to close dance, if you will, and that's called a dogfight when you're in airplanes in the air. And in this dogfighting, they have tested now who is the best, AI or humans, and they found out that if in dogfighting, the AI pretty much always wins. The AI is significantly better than the human because obvious things stated before, an AI has faster reaction speeds. But also the fact that humans have a certain amount of G forces that they can tolerate while they're doing a maneuver. And an AI has a lower tolerance and can do a quicker or a more aggressive turn in a dogfight, which means that they are far superior in fighting other people. Which means in the very near future, we are no longer going to have probably any people inside of these fighter jets because it will be far inferior to other countries who probably will not have anybody in there either. That way, they can fly for further, they can weigh a little bit less, they can fight significantly better, and you're going to have to do that if other players in the game, meaning other countries, are going to develop AI for their airplanes. Everybody else is going to have to as well, or they're going to risk, invasion. So I think in the not so distant future, it's going to be just a weird world we're growing up in because it's going to be capital. And I mean, these F-16s are multi-million dollars, and the AI, I'm sure, is multi-million dollars as well. And it's going to be multi-million dollar fight versus another multi-million dollar airplane fight. And it's just going to be capital thrown at capital with no actual human lives lost. And I think we're heading in that direction anyway in the future. And that scares the crap out of me. That's going to be really, really interesting when we have AI who kills people or other airplanes and other things. And it has
What do you
actually.
mean? Like, it scares you in the sense of we are training an AI to with the goal to destroy people,
I mean, it.
destroy.
I mean, I imagine that that's not how it's being worded and said. It's going to always be worded around defense, I think. So it's going to be something like this. If other countries are going to develop AI, we're going to need to have AI to protect ourselves in our country. And therefore, in the name of realism, you have an arms race, don't you?
Yeah, but in that case, what if offense is the best defense?
Yeah, there's going to be countries who view this, and that's what's going to get really, really weird. Is you're going to have capital against capital.
Yeah, and the dangerous thing is, what if the AI gets out of control in the sense of in programming, there's like something called a while loop. So the program is executing this part of the code as long as the condition is true, and if the condition is always true, then the AI is just always fighting, always trying to go offensive and destroy. So that's dangerous.
Yeah. I think it's even before we even get that far. I think it's really dangerous and scary that you're gonna have, money fighting against money, and one of the monies are gonna explode, and it's gonna cost everybody a shit ton of wait for it money, and it's gonna be done so.
But at least it's not costing us human lives, right?
Well, that's what we're gonna have to figure out as humans: is where do we draw that line? Is that better? Is it better if it's just an economic cost? Or does that incentivize maybe more wars? If the cost is very high, meaning it costs lives, and particularly lives of high ranking officials, etc., then that's a pretty strong motivator for not having war. But flipped on its head, and you have no risk to if you're thinking about chess, no risk to other teams. You're no risk to your own queen and king, for example. But you have enough capital that you can risk their king and queen. You're going to take that shot, right? You're going to do it. And I think we're entering a very strange world where we're going to have to figure out how do we want this world to look? Is that acceptable? Is that something we should limit? And even can we? Once the cat's out of the box, what are you going to do? Uninvent AI dogfighting? You can't. So. What's this next step forward? Crazy. Fun to think about. Wild.
Yeah, all of these are good questions that we will look at in another episode.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you guys for listening.
Have a good rest of your day, and thank you for being a loyal listener of the Kimudo podcast.
Okay.
Bye-bye.